Good evening and welcome. Tonight, as you can tell from this and the title, we're going to be reading from History Magazine. Now, this video is dedicated to S. Heffley, who picked the articles that I'm going to be reading to you tonight. And if you want to join my memberships, you can click the join button down there. It's only 99 cents a month. I'll never raise it. There'll never be levels. I'll make it as affordable as possible. The lowest possible price it'll let me set. And you too can pick the History Magazine articles. I'm posting the new magazine on my memberships videos right after this goes live, so you can pick out an article from there if you'd like to join. And since S. Heffley is the world's biggest Topple fan, we gotta get Topple in here, the elephant, the ASMR elephant. I go like this with his ears up by the microphone. And then I can do some mic trunk brushing. That's just for you, Heffley. Alright, so the articles that S. Heffley picked out are going to be about the Venus of Willendorf figures and the Orient Express. But I'm also doing viewer-requested topics today, and someone requested that I do the History Magazine little article about Margherita pizza. So we're going to start with that, and then we'll get into the main articles. So let's read about the history of Margherita pizza, which is this pizza here, as you can see. Fit for a queen pizza, Margherita. I don't know, Margherita pizza is not my favorite, but I'll eat it. It's not bad. I love all pizza. Pizza is one of the most popular dishes in the whole world. This simple combination of baked flatbread, tomatoes, and cheese floured in Italy and then spread to the United States in the early 20th century with Italian immigrants. Pizza's popularity exploded in America, becoming ubiquitous across the nation. There are many different styles of pizza, but only one has a royal pedigree. The origin story began when the Queen of Italy visited Naples in 1889. Strolling through the streets of the city center, Queen Margherita and her husband smelled a delicious aroma wafting from a pizzeria. Here we go. Intrigued, the couple invited the chef of the establishment, Raffaele Esposito, to the city's Capodimonte Palace to cook the dish for them there. Esposito prepared 3 different kinds of pizza. One option emulated the colors of the Italian flag. It featured red tomatoes, white mozzarella, and fresh green basil. The following day, Esposito received a letter from Camillo Galli, head of the services of the table of the royal household, which read, "Esteemed Signor Raffaele Esposito, I confirm that the 3 kinds of pizza prepared by you for Her Royal Highness the Queen were found to be excellent." Although Margherita enjoyed all 3 pizzas, she declared the red, white, and green to be her favorite. Esposito duly named it after her, and a classic Neapolitan specialty was born. Pizza and patriotism. Oh, there he is right there. That's pretty cool. This tale, with variations, continues to be told in tourist guides, cookbooks, and food histories. It has the right ingredients for popular appeal: the fairy tale motif of a queen sampling the food of the common people, and the patriotic overtones embodied by the colors of the pizza and the Italian flag. Aspects of the story have been verified. Historians confirm that in 1889, Esposito was the owner of a pizzeria, which, by coincidence, he had renamed as the Queen of Italy Pizzeria 6 years before. Umberto and Margherita were indeed in Naples when the pizza letter was sent on June 11th, 1889. Gali was the head of the services of the table of the royal household, and the royals did have a motive to ingratiate themselves with the Neapolitans, who had chafed under the high taxes of the new Kingdom of Italy. The movement to free Italy from foreign rule had begun in the early 1800s. In 1861, southern Italy and Naples was wrested from its Bourbon rulers, who were linked to Spain, and the independent Kingdom of Italy was proclaimed. The inclusion of Rome in the new kingdom in 1870 completed unification. In 1878, Italy's second king was crowned, Umberto I, with Margherita as his queen. United Italy, its flag, and its monarchy, however, were new concepts, and not popular with all. In the first year of his reign, Umberto survived an assassination attempt in Naples. Food, therefore, could be a unifier, especially a Neapolitan pizza made with the colors of the flag, praised by and named for the Queen. Cooking up a myth. Was the pizza Margherita a savvy piece of culinary diplomacy crafted by royal officials? Having the royal family sample the food of the people would be a way to win over hearts and minds. Traditionally, the origin story had been interpreted that way. There's Margherita, by the way. According to recent research, however, the story is not only just that, a story, but one based on forgery. Food historians have found several key holes in the account. Probably the most damning is that the dish existed at least 3 decades before any royal visit to Naples. In an 1853 collection of essays about Neapolitan customs, author Emanuele Rocco described a pizza topped with basilico, mozzarella, e pomodoro, basil, mozzarella, and tomatoes. Sorry if my Italian is terrible. Local records reveal no contemporary reference to the Esposito Pizzeria incident. The Gazette of the Kingdom of Italy, which published royal news, has no mention of the Queen's visit or Gali's letter to Esposito. Samples of Gali's handwriting have been compared to the signature of the letter sent to Esposito. They do not match. So if Gali did not write the letter on behalf of the Queen, who did? A possible clue lies in the name of the letter's recipient, Raffaele Esposito Brandi. The inclusion of this second surname is odd. Raffaele Esposito's wife, Maria Giovanna, had the maiden name of Brandi. Traditionally, European men do not take their wives' last names, so Esposito would not have used Brandi. There were, however, 2 people linked to the pizzeria who would have: Giovanni and Pasquale Brandi, Maria's nephews, who took over the pizzeria in 1932. One theory is that the Brandi brothers, trying to drum up business, crafted the hoax. Having renamed the establishment the Pizzeria Brandi in 1932, the letter they allegedly forged had to have a reference to the Brandi name. Tales of the royals eating street food were widespread in Italy. In 1880, a decade before the pizza letter was allegedly sent, a similar story appeared in the newspaper Il Bersagliere, in which Queen Margherita praised a pizza maker's wares. Esposito's pizzeria is still in business today and is still called Pizzeria Brandi. The veracity of the Pizza Margherita story is still in question, but in 1989, to mark the 100th anniversary of the pizza's naming, a commemorative plaque was placed on the wall outside. Isn't that interesting? All right, let me slide this magazine aside so we can get to this one. Put it down there. Okay. Let's read about the Venus statues of Willendorf, which I flipped right to it. Look at that. I think there's a main picture. Icons of the Stone Age. Isn't that a remarkable picture? My goodness. Let's see. For about as long as people have been making art, female forms have been artists' favorite subjects. From the iconic Venus de Milo, sculpted in 2nd century BCE Greece, to John Singer Sargent's 1884 elegant Madame X. The anonymous artists of the Stone Age were no different. Small statues of women were among their most popular works of art. Found across Europe and Asia, these female figurines curated during the Paleolithic period may seem crude by comparison when gazing at the brushstrokes of Madame X's flawless skin or Venus's beautifully sculpted face. Roughly rendered, the Stone Age figures' feminine traits, breasts, bellies, and hips, are large and exaggerated. Their lines are not streamlined and smooth, but rounded and swelling. Rather than sparkling eyes and smiling lips, their faces often lack distinctive features. Collectively referred to as the Venus figurines, these statues are at the beginning of a long tradition of depicting the female form in art. They help connect modern viewers to the very distant past and the worlds of their creators some 35,000 to 14,000 years ago. You can see here. Interesting. Shapes and sizes. Human beings became artists about 80,000 years ago, but their first subjects were not people. Some of the earliest examples appear like abstract geometric patterns. As humanity progressed to more realistic depictions of the world around them, among their most popular subjects were animals like the horses and aurochs from the Chauvet Cave in southeastern France. Human forms begin to appear somewhere between 30,000 and 40,000 years ago in the Paleolithic period. Few works of art depicting people have survived from this time to the modern age. Among the ones that have, more of them are female forms than male. Roughly 200 of the works of art now called Venuses have been found distributed across Western Europe, concentrated in the Pyrenean area and southwest France, as well as in Italy. Central Europe, especially around the Rhine and Danube basins, and Eastern Europe and Asia, in southern Russia and as far east as Siberia. Whether carved from stone or bone or fashioned from clay, the most notable feature among these works of art is their size. They are all tiny, measuring between 2 and 10 inches high, which made them portable and easy for nomadic peoples to carry from place to place. Many of the Venus's faces lack well-defined brows, eyes, noses, and mouths. Some are as smooth as an egg. When facial features are present, they tend to be generalized, which led scholars to believe they could be general female representations rather than portraits of specific women. Another hallmark of these Stone Age figures is that many of them are nude, a trait that may, hold on, we'll look at this after, may have shocked the men who uncovered them in the 1800s. The figures do not appear demure or modest. Their nudity is direct and matter-of-fact. A few of the figurines wear minimal adornments such as necklaces, hoods, hairnets, and belts or bracelets. Their bodies do reflect different physical types. Some are slim and others curvy, while their breasts, hips, and bellies are rounded and prominent. The oldest figure discovered so far comes from the German site of Hohlfels and dates back about 35,000 years. It measures just 2.5 inches tall. The youngest figures found to date are about 14,000 years old. Such a wide time span demonstrates that these figures were important to prehistoric peoples for a very long period of time. Over here's the Venus of Willendorf, like the most famous, most iconic one. It's literally like this big, by the way. This is like gigantic. Early discoveries. European scholars began recovering the so-called Venus figurines in the 19th century. The first one was found in 1864 by French archaeologist Paul Hurot, Marquis de Vibray. He uncovered a 3-inch high ivory figurine at Logerie Basse, France. The carved nude figure is missing its head and arms, but the hips, pubic mound, and legs are well defined. Analysis shows that the figure dates to around 17,000 to 12,000 years ago. Herald dubbed the small statue Venus Impudique, which means immodest Venus, in a nod to European artworks that depict Venus Pudica, or modest Venus. A famous example of Sandro Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, in which the Roman goddess of love and beauty modestly shields the viewer from her nudity. The prehistoric female figure from Logerie Basse and many others found since then present rather than cover up their bodies. Herald's naming convention caught on among other archaeologists of the time, and Paleolithic statues like these were soon grouped together as Venuses in the collective imagination. The Venus of Brassempuis, discovered in 1894, is believed to be the world's oldest depiction of the human face. Wow. Sculpted in ivory roughly 25,000 years ago. Her brows and nose have been carefully rendered in miniature. The figure is sometimes called the Hooded Lady because of the pattern of lines etched into her head. Some scholars interpret them as a hood with a decorative pattern, while others believe it simply represents hair. And here she is. Isn't that incredible? Wow. And again, it's like this big. The Brassempuis fragment is small, slightly more than an inch in length, and scholars believe it was once part of a larger figure carved from a mammoth's tusk. French archaeologist Edouard Piet discovered the sculpture in a cave in southwestern France. Exploring the cave in the 1890s, Piet's team also found fragments of other anthropomorphic works, some of which appeared female. Perhaps the most iconic figure is the so-called Venus of Willendorf, discovered in the Danube Valley of Austria. Named after the place where it was found in 1908, the small limestone figure measures slightly more than 4 inches high. The artist carved several bands encircling the figure's head, which may be hair or may depict a hat. The figure's body features large breasts, a protruding belly, rounded buttocks, and legs that taper to a point. The artist's visual emphasis led scholars in the 1900s to believe that the artwork must be a fertility goddess who embodied love and beauty. Their conclusions came under scrutiny in the following decades, as debate arose over what evidence existed to support a claim that the Venus of Willendorf's subject shared a function similar to its Roman-era namesake. Explanations and controversies. These statues may be small in stature, but the debate surrounding them is enormous. The function and meaning of the Venuses have been hotly debated ever since the first discovery in the 19th century. Since Stone Age humans left behind no written records, scholars have had to rely on the archaeological record to formulate different hypotheses. Because this kind of evidence may be more open to interpretation, consensus among scholars has been difficult to achieve. Even the term Venus has come under fire since it is an anachronism. Venus would not be worshipped until the Roman era, and because it may imply that the Stone Age figures fulfilled the same role as the Roman goddess. The name has stuck in the popular consciousness, but scholars debate its continued use. One of the earliest and most common theories was that the small carved figures were goddesses of childbirth and reproduction. They served as divine representations and were used in fertility rituals. This theory puts forth the notion that the communities across Europe and Asia highly valued fecundity and motherhood enough to display them in their works of art. Some researchers argue that because the figures are loosely naturalistic rather than realistic and based on a specific person, they must have been endowed with ceremonial or commemorative purposes. The female figurines perhaps served as a link between the worlds of the living and the dead in this context. Others suggested that they were ritual items believed to possess supernatural powers and used by shamans or healers. Other hypotheses have moved away from religious or mystical considerations into the more mundane. Some research's explanations range far and wide, from erotic objects to children's toys. It is, of course, possible that the figures were made for different purposes in different places or periods, as the geographic areas and time spans in which they have been found are both vast. One controversial recent theory is that some of the figures may be self-portraits, created from the perspective of a woman looking down at her own body. As research progresses and new discoveries are made, it is almost certain that ideas will continue to evolve on the roles of the figures. Practical considerations. The figures' abundant curves, large breasts, and swollen bellies have led many researchers analyzing this prehistoric art to link it to reproduction. Studies into the birth rate and demographics of today's hunter-gatherer societies suggest that a woman who reaches 40 years of age in optimal health is likely to have had an average of 6 to 7 children. In the Paleolithic, however, infant and child mortality rates were much higher. Exact figures are difficult to calculate, but some studies estimate that roughly 28% of children died in the first year of life. In addition to high infant mortality, the fatalities of women who died in childbirth or shortly after, also difficult to calculate exactly, are equally estimated to have been quite high. Maintaining populations, given these demographic trends, would be difficult. Scholars studying the Venus figurines look to these harsh realities when forming their hypotheses about the motivations behind creating the figures. They see the robust, rounded figures as a representation of healthy mothers whose physical abundance provided the greatest possibilities for perpetuation of the group. Stone Age peoples may have believed that a well-nourished woman was more likely to produce a well-nourished newborn and to survive the rigors of pregnancy and childbirth. Some figures, however, do not fit neatly into these assumptions. Figures found in Russia and Siberia are markedly different. They were more recently produced, dating to approximately 17,000 years ago. Although the figures are nude and lacked defined facial features like specimens found in Western Europe, the bodies of these Eastern works are slim with less prominent sexual characteristics. Some scholars believe the groups living in these regions might have been more stable, with fewer anxieties surrounding maintaining the population. The large number of female figurines and the predominance of female representations over male ones during the Paleolithic highlights the social importance of women in the hunter-gatherer societies of that time. It is remarkable to consider that these female figures, sharing many stylistic traits, were being carved across a broad geographic range of Paleolithic communities, from southern France all the way to Siberia, for at least 20,000 years. The symbolism transcended a particular time and place and was kept alive across all kinds of natural terrain and environments. The archaeological evidence suggests a deep-rooted common ideology in the Paleolithic period about the value of women. All right, let's look back at the figurines that we skipped over. So here's a map of all of the different Venuses that have been found. Isn't that so interesting? That they all have essentially the same characteristics. Oh, this is Logerie Basse. This is a lion, it says. Kind of in the same style-ish, right? And this is, this was discovered in Russia. Don't see its name. Was discovered in 1983, and you can see it has the, like, just plain head, and then everything else is really distinct, right? Interesting. And look at this one. A very, very defined figure. Again, with just a plain head and This one's very smooth, isn't it? And then a portrait of what these women probably looked like. Venus of Hohlhefels right here. Very tiny head. This is the Losel Venus here. And then that's the end. Okay. Alright, let's head over to the next article. There's an airplane landing at the airport. Let's read about the Orient Express. Let's see. Here we go. The Orient Express, Romance on the Railway. Oh, is that gorgeous? This is Gare l'Est in Paris. Here we go. On October 4th, 1883, in the Gare de l'Est train station, Paris was brimming with anticipation. Around 24 intrepid passengers were preparing to board a luxury train that would expand the frontiers of travel. The train's destination, Constantinople, which is now, of course, known as Istanbul. Its name, the Orient Express, an intercontinental rail service that would soon become a global legend. The idea of a railway linking Europe from west to east emerged from a project led by the Belgian engineer Georges Nagelmakers, and soon came to symbolize the Belle Époque, a golden age in Europe spanning the end of the Franco-Prussian War in 1871 and the start of the First World War in 1914. It was a period when artistic culture flourished, globe-trotting tourism blossomed, and the middle and upper classes enjoyed a newfound prosperity and cosmopolitanism. Luxury on the rails. We'll check out the map after. By the late 19th century, most European countries were connected by rail, yet train travel was a largely unpleasant experience. Rough and dirty, unreliable, and sometimes dangerous, with complicated, time-consuming border crossings. Unfortunately, there was scant incentive to improve things. Business was booming, and rail owners viewed innovations with suspicion. In the 1860s, however, with rail lines vining their way across the continent, luxury hotels started to take root across the routes, which is where Nagelmakers, the scion of a prominent Belgian banking family, came in. While on a long holiday in the United States, Nagelmakers fell under the spell of the popular Pullman sleeper cars, clean, comfortable, hotel-like passenger cars designed for long trips. Nagelmakers was so enamored of this opulent mode of transport that he asked its creator, the American engineer and industrialist George Mortimer Pullman, to become his partner in a venture that would bring splendor and convenience to European railways. With the Belle Époque about to bloom, Nagelmakers sensed an untapped demand for a new kind of travel, one that would combine glamour and luxury. Pullman declined, so Nagelmakers returned to Europe and, using the Pullman blueprint, set about designing a sumptuous sleeper train. The Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871 briefly delayed Nagelmakers' plan, but by 1873 he had formed his own company, initially called Georges Nagelmakers and Company, then the Compagnie Internationale des Wagonlit, or CIWL, Wagonlit being French for sleeper cars. His ambitious vision, one that would sweep passengers from Paris to Constantinople in luxurious sleeper cars without having to stop at borders, required a powerful patron. Nagelmakers found the ally he needed in King Leopold II of Belgium. The monarch was widely known as both a savvy financier and a railroad enthusiast. Leopold II saw the business potential of Nagelmakers' idea and helped him secure the necessary contracts with railway administrations in the 8 different countries for what would become the CIWL's flagship railway line. Soon after its founding, the CIWL began providing catering and accommodation services to various European railway companies in the form of sleeper carriages, saloon carriages, and dining cars. After the creation of the Orient Express, the CIWL adopted a rather cumbersome new name, the International Company of Sleeper Carriages and Great European Expresses. It would establish a network of luxury trains, including the Blue Train, the Golden Arrow, and the Taurus Express, all over Europe. In time, it became the first multinational corporation dedicated to opulent transport and hospitality, with trains and other holdings eventually spreading from Europe to Asia and Africa. Maiden voyage. A year before the inaugural departure of the Orient Express on October 10th, 1882, Nagelmacher's invited guests on a trial run of his Train Éclair de Luxe, or luxury lightning train, on a round trip from Paris to Vienna. The lavish menu served on that test run: oysters, soup with Italian pasta, turbot and green sauce, chicken chasseur, beef tenderloin, venison, salad, and a variety of pastries, plus Bordeaux and Burgundy wines, and of course French champagne, offered a taste of things to come. The first official journey of the Orient Express, a name bestowed on the train by newspapers, despite the fact that Constantinople, a city straddling two continents and multiple cultures, wasn't really part of the Orient, and subsequently embraced by Nagelmachers, was a grand affair attended by many of the leading lights of Paris's diplomatic, financial, and journalistic circles. The train consisted of 3 carriages, 2 sleeper cars, a dining car, and 2 luggage wagons. Each wagon, built of teak wood heated by steam, lit by gaslight, was about 57 feet long. The summer and fall of 1883 was a politically restive time in the Balkans, which the train would have to traverse, so some travelers packed pistols for self-defense. Among them were 2 people whose testimonies became invaluable sources for the atmosphere on the train: Edmond About, a novelist and correspondent for the French daily newspaper Le Figaro, and Henri Opper de Blowitz, a correspondent for the Times of London. Both produced rich, detailed chronicles that captured the magnificence of the train. Blowitz revealed in describing the dining car a bright white tablecloths and napkins, artistically and coquettishly folded by the sommeliers, the glittering glasses, the ruby red and topaz white wine, the crystal clear water decanters, and the silver capsules of the champagne bottles. They blind the eyes of the public both inside and outside. About, meanwhile, was delighted to find that the sheets are changed every day, a refinement unknown even in the finest mansions. Each compartment naturally had the most modern amenities of the day: central heating, hot water, and private bathrooms. The decor of the Orient Express was undoubtedly luxurious and exquisite. Inspired by the best hotels in the world, the train cars boasted embossed leather ceilings, velvet curtains, silk sheets, mahogany furniture, silver cutlery, crystal glassware, marble fixtures, and bronze taps. The train was lit by lamps from the factory of renowned Art Nouveau glassmaker Émile Gallet, and its walls were adorned with tapestries woven by Gobelin, the Parisian design house that had been supplying the French court since the time of Louis XV. Dining on the Orient Express was another major attraction. On the excellent, expensive menu during that first official journey, dinner cost 6 francs, lunch 4 francs, and half a bottle of Moet and Chandon 7 francs. The champagne alone cost about 2 days' wages for a French coal miner at the time. The menu in French and German was laden with delicacies: the finest French cheeses, foie gras, roast beef, caviar, and soufflé. Initially, the train left twice a week from Paris's Gare de l'Est, passing through Strasbourg, Munich, Vienna, Budapest, and Bucharest en route to the Romanian city of Giurgiu. In Giurgiu, passengers would cross the Danube River by ferry to the neighboring Rus in Bulgaria. From there, another train took them to the Bulgarian port of Varna on the Black Sea, where they were ferried by steamship to Constantinople. Passengers on the first Orient Express took a total of 81.5 hours to cross Europe. The first journey concluded with a lavish reception at the Topkapi Palace, organized by the Ottoman Sultan Abdul Hamid II. The next day, the travelers turned around and returned to Paris, arriving on October 16th. As About wrote in his diary, "Until now, when you had days off and wanted to travel, you went to Fontainebleau or the ports of the English Channel. Today you can travel to Constantinople." And he was right. Monarchs and millionaires. The Orient Express was revolutionary for the cosmopolitans at the heart of the Belle Epoque. A trip on the Orient Express soon became a must for anyone who wanted to be anyone in European high society. For many Americans, word of the luxury line reached their shores in 1891, when the train's famous writers, such as Prince William of Baden, started making the news, inspiring the wealthiest Americans to buy tickets. Ooh, how cool. We'll look at that after, too. On June 1st, 1889, nearly 6 years after its inauguration, the Orient Express made its first direct journey, covering the distance from Paris to Constantinople in 67 hours and 35 minutes. In many ways, this was the start of the train's golden age. Yet convenient intercontinental transport remained secondary to luxury and romance. Direct route or no, the Express's carriages were the setting for business deals, diplomacy, and exclusive soirees. Elegance was the order of the day, with a rigid protocol observed on board in dress and behavior. Evening attire was required for dinner, women in gowns and men in tuxedos or tailcoats. Royals, too, succumbed to the charms of the Express. Edward VII of England took a trip while still Prince of Wales. The Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria used it more than once to travel to his territories in the Balkans. Original patron Leopold II of Belgium was a regular passenger. Ferdinand I of Bulgaria, a railway enthusiast, was sometimes allowed by the engine driver to take over the controls. Over the years, the monarchs and aristocrats were joined by politicians, adventurers such as T.E. Lawrence, better known as Lawrence of Arabia, and figures from the world of the arts. The creator of the Ballet Russe, Sergei Diaghilev, dancers Vaslav Nijinsky and Anna Pavlova, and the spy Mata Hari all were passengers on the Orient Express. Later in the 20th century, the actress Marlene Dietrich and soprano Maria Callas also joined the passenger list. So many VIPs arrived in Constantinople on the Orient Express that the sumptuous Pera Palace Hotel, overlooking the Golden Horn, was opened in 1892 to accommodate them. Special horse-drawn coaches were laid on to take passengers directly from Sirkechi Station to the hotel. Among its famous guests were performer Josephine Baker, statesman Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, King George V, and actress Greta Garbo. After the Swedish-American icon of the late silent era and golden age of Hollywood stayed there in 1924, the hotel created a suite of spacious and stylish Greta Garbo corner rooms in her honor. Triumphs and travails. Despite the array of comforts and technical advances that the Orient Express boasted, it experienced plenty of mishaps too, some of them serious. Snow blocked the convoy on several occasions, with the passengers experiencing temperatures so low that they were forced to sleep fully clothed. Crew members had to trek several miles through the snow in order to get provisions for the kitchen. In 1914, the onset of the First World War upended travel. Europe's rail lines were now used for moving troops, rations, and supplies, not well-heeled cosmopolitans. Nagelmacher's ideal had been a railway that crossed borders and served to connect a united Europe. During the war, the Orient Express had to stop operating. Service would not resume until 1918. The Simplon Tunnel, which was built in 1906 and linked Switzerland with Italy, made it possible to create an alternate route, the Simplon Orient Express, in 1919. The Simplon route, which followed tracks from Paris through Lausanne, Milan, Venice, and Trieste, then connected with the original route in Belgrade, traversed the Alps, and managed to avoid Germany altogether. As the 1920s raced by, the Orient Express bounced back and the railway cars were upgraded. The line became once again a symbol of luxury ridden by celebrities, aristocrats, and a host of other famous, wealthy people. The train's glory was further burnished in 1930 when a third route, the Aalborg Orient Express, was opened. The Renaissance would not last as the Second World War shut down the Orient Express again. Service returned after the war, but the train's glory days were behind it. The luxe sleeper and dining cars were now interspersed with ordinary passenger cars. Closed borders complicated the route, leaving the famous sleeping cars empty. Yugoslavia and Greece, for instance, did not reopen their border until 1951. Between 1952 and 1953, the route between Bulgaria and Turkey was closed too, which prevented the train from reaching Istanbul during that time. Ridership declined, which some experts attribute to the rise of commercial air travel. As the 20th century wore on, the Simplon Orient Express remained in operation, but it was a shell of its former self. In 1959, the French writer Paul Morand, who had been an unconditional admirer of the train, wrote, "The Orient Express has become a ghost train whose passengers reflect bitterly on the human condition. Our frivolity, perhaps excessive, has been succeeded by anguish." In 1977, nearly all services ended, including the last holdout of the original service, the Direct Orient Express. The last run from Paris to Istanbul left the station on May 10, 1977. Various operations would continue to run train service under the name Orient Express in the coming years, but the full original route with its luxurious cars would be no more. In 1982, American businessman James Sherwood launched a luxury train service featuring restored cars from the original Orient Express, with several routes from London and Paris to Venice. For those on a budget, original cars can be viewed today in the Thessaloniki Railway Museum in Greece, relics of romance and luxury from the most legendary train in history. Alright, let's look at all the pictures now, because there's some really cool ones in here, huh? Let's see, let's start with the map. So the red line is the Orient Express starting in Paris. Heading down, you can stop in Salzburg, Vienna, Budapest. This one heading to Belgrade. And this looks like that original one that you had to take like a ferry and all of that from Varna. And then the green is the Simplon, which goes through the Simplon Tunnel there, northern Italy. And then meeting in Belgrade. And then the London-Paris connection goes up here from London to Dover to Calais and then down to Paris. Pretty cool. Let's see. This is the Budapest Keleti station. Gorgeous Art Nouveau style there. Really pretty depiction of the, what's it called? It's not the sleeper cars, the saloon car. And who's this? A mystery couple. Basil Samaroft. And, okay, people I don't know, but apparently this is a scandalous photograph. People the Orient Express. Dining in the 20s. This is a recreated Orient Express car. Look at this. So you see the kitchen there, the little waiter station, and the dining car. And this must be like the smoking car or something. Anyway, that's what the sleeper cars looked like, the beds, and their private bathroom, and then their little private area. Oh boy. Let's see, this is the Simplon Orient Express. There's Greta Garbo. Iconic. Trying to conceal her identity, but she has a famous face. Murder on the Orient Express. I feel like people know the movie, the book, more than the actual Orient Express. And then this is the station in Turkey that people would have ended their travel at. Let's see if there's any more. Oh, look at this. A catalog of accidents. Oh dear. Trapped in the snow. Derailed in Frankfurt. Crashed in Romania. And what is this? Bombed on a viaduct. Oh dear. When was that? 1931. Oh dear, that's horrible. And then that's the end. Okay. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you found this video relaxing and educational. And as this last plane lands down at the airport, I hope that you have a very good